Okay, we will call this regular council meeting to order for April the 24th, and we'll begin with Councillor Maceras reading the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, thank you. And I'd also like to welcome everyone who's in the gallery with us today. And we'll now move on to 2.1, any additions or deletions to the agenda. CEO Becker.
Mayor Barkley, just a letter that's on your table there for addition to correspondence.
Yep. Thank you. Could I please have someone make a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
Mayor Barkley, I would make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, thank you. Carried. And we'll move into 3.1, the regular council meeting of April 10th. When someone's ready, I'll have you make a motion, please, to accept the minutes as presented.
Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. Any changes, discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And we'll move on to the agenda priorities meeting of April 17th.
I'll move those minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right, thanks. So we'll move into 4.1. We have a delegation today. I'd like to welcome BDO, and I'll let Director Vickers introduce.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So we do have Mitchell Kennedy and Stephen Sipkis, sorry, apology, from BDO. So the town did employ BDO to conduct our annual audit for the year of 2022. It has now been completed and is in front of you for your review. The 2022 audited financial statements and financial information return are to be submitted to Municipal Affairs by May 1st, 2023. BDO did come on between March 14th and 15th in person, as well as with some work being completed online. And so they are here to ask or answer any questions that council may have.
Great, thank you and welcome.
Testing. Okay, sorry. So I'm going to go over the audit report. After I go over the audit report, I'm going to pass it to Steve, and he's going to give you kind of an analytic on the balance sheet, income statement, go over some of the notes. If you guys have any questions at all as we go through this, please stop us at any time. So if you guys want to turn to the independent auditor's report, which is going to be the second page in your financial statements. So we have audited the consolidated financial statements of Town of Innisfail. In our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. When we do our audit, we conduct our audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards and the accounting framework under the municipality's public sector accounting standards. So these financial statements here are presented fairly, and in preparing these consolidated financial statements, even though we assist the town in the preparation of these financial statements, the ownership of these financial statements are the town's. Our objective is to obtain reasonable assurance over these financial statements to ensure that they are free from material misstatement. And ways we do that is by identifying and assessing risks of material misstatement. Just want to go to the next page. We obtain audit evidence that is sufficient and appropriate to provide our basis of our opinion. We obtain an understanding of your internal controls that are relevant to the audit. We evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies used. We conclude on the appropriateness of management's use of the going concern basis of accounting. We evaluate the overall presentation, structure, and content that are within these financial statements, and we obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to ensure that these truly are in fact free from material misstatements. So to reiterate, we're issuing a clean audit opinion on these financial statements for 2022. I'm just going to pass this to Steve.
Okay, starting on the consolidated statement of financial position, which is the next page. I'm just going to go over the major changes that happened in the year. So the big one, or one of the big ones, is going to be cash and cash equivalents. Last year you had 18.8 million in the bank. Now it's down to 12.8. We're going to talk about that a little bit more on the statement of changes in cash flows. Everything else is pretty much in line. If you look at accounts payable and accrued liabilities, that's really just a timing difference of kind of when you guys are paying your bills. And then deferred revenue. Last year that was 2.5 million. Now it's down to 1.2, or just shy of 1.2 million. And we'll talk about that more on note 6. You guys bought a bunch of capital assets in the year. So that's why if you look at tangible capital assets, that jumped up. And that's pretty much the big stuff on the consolidated statement of financial position. I'm going to move us on to the statement of operations. On this one, we're really trying to compare mostly to the budget. And if you look at this, for the most part, you guys are pretty close and pretty in line with the budget. The big change on the revenue side of things is you have contributed assets of $3.4 million. This comes from a developer that had to, as part of their agreement with you guys, cede over a bunch of property to you. So you've taken over that property in the year. Same thing on the expenditures. If we're looking, you guys are pretty close to all of your expense line items, so you did a really good job there. The big thing here is your loss on disposal of tangible capital assets. And so really that's more of a net book value of when you're disposing of your capital assets. So it's not a cash loss, it's just something that, it's an accounting concept really. So you have total expenditures of 22 million, total deficiency of revenues over expenditures, or I guess total revenues over expenditures of 566,000. You had some government transfers from other governments, giving you an excess of revenues over expenditures of $3.2 million. I'm going to move on to the consolidated statement of cash flows, which is the next one. Yeah. So here we want to start with our net income, or our excess of revenues over expenditures of 3.2. And we want to account for all of our cash and non-cash transactions. So we want to remove the $3.4 million of contributed assets. You didn't have to pay for that. We want to add back in your amortization. That's a non-cash item. Same with your net loss on disposal of tangible capital assets. Then we want to account for all of our changes in our balance sheet. So if you were to look at the prior and the current year and calculate the difference in between, that's really what's happening here. So we have a total change of $2.9 million there. Then in the year, you guys bought just shy of $9 million of capital assets. You received 68,000, and so some of that stuff you sold in the year. And then really your investing transactions, that's really just, you took stuff out of your GICs that you had in the prior year. So you had a net change in cash and cash equivalents of negative $4.6 million. And so we want to apply that to our opening cash balance of 16.2 million. And when you do the math on that, it comes out to 11.64. And then, yeah, technically you had 12.8 million in the bank, but there was still a restricted portion. And I'll talk about that more when we get to the cash note, which I think is next. I'm going to skip over these significant accounting policies. Nothing changed there. So when we get to note 1, you can see cash and cash equivalent. You have $12.8 million in the bank. But when you go down here, just shy of 1.2 million is pledged for grants. So these are things that you have to spend money on in order to earn these grants. Or to recognize them into revenue, sorry. The next one I want to talk about is note 6, which is your deferred revenue note. And if you look at the end column here, your ending balance is 1.158, and that's the same balance that we just talked about on the cash note and on the statement of cash flow. But really, you have your opening balance of last year's just shy of $2.6 million of deferred revenue. Then you received another $2.5 million from different grants in the year, and you recognized just over $3.9 million for that ending balance of $1.15 million. The next note I really want to talk about is note 11. There you go. And so I really want to draw your attention to the restricted surplus column. We have $12.14 million of restricted surplus. And so What you want to do is you want to compare this number to your net financial assets on your statement of financial position, and that's really your balance sheet. So this number, this restricted surplus, does not exceed your net financial assets, which means your reserves are fully funded, and that's a good thing. Go to the next page. We can talk about our debt limits. Town's debt limit is calculated by taking your operating revenues less your contributed assets, really, and timesing it by 1.5 for a total of just shy of $30 million that you guys could take on in debt. And next, you have a debt servicing limit, and that's calculated as 0.25% of your operating revenues, again, less your contributed assets, and that gets you about $5 million of a debt servicing limit. And then the last thing I want to talk about is your expenses by object note. That's note 17. So this note is really just kind of a different presentation of your expenses that we talked about. I'm trying to find the page. On your statement of operations. At the end here, we have our expenses by object for 2022 of $22.6 million. That number agrees exactly to your expenditures on the statement of operations. It's just a different presentation. So if you wanted to know what the total salaries and wages for the town were, you could look on this note and see, oh, it's just over $7 million. So it's really just a different presentation of those same numbers. Those are the notes I really wanted to talk about. If you guys have any questions, now's the perfect time.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions about anything that's been presented so far? No, doesn't seem so. Okay.
I think that's all he had.
We would like to thank Erica, Todd, and Sherry once again for their help. Couldn't have done this audit without them. Easy to work with, and we like working with the town. So thanks again for everybody's help.
Thanks. I was just wondering, Director Vickers, and I don't know what page it was on now, but I know the new industrial park is tagged Lagoon Lands. I'm wondering if that could be changed to new industrial park or something. Maybe in brackets Lagoon Lands, so we know what it is, but it's minor. Okay, well, thank you very much for all the work on this.
Thanks again.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
And later in the agenda, we will be asking for an RFD on the audited financial statements. So. All right, we will get into 5.1 with the Chief Administrative Officer report with CEO Becker.
Thanks, Mayor Barkley. Hello, Council. Just a few items for Council attention. Please ask any questions of this report or anything else operationally or projects, etc., to help you out. Just a few highlights. Recently, members of the administration team went to SAIT to talk with the Energy Futures Lab or meet with them and explore solutions in relation to buildings and energy emissions moving into a net zero discussion, I suppose. The report indicates that Canada has 18% of the CO2 emissions comes from buildings. However, I recently found out that Calgary and Edmonton are in that 30% range, so in average, lessens on the bigger spectrum nationally. So a large contributor to the emissions within our country. Some of the discussions identified and talked about at the session included the technology applications using the City of Calgary's Living Labs program to look at data within some of their facilities to explore what data exists, what data does not exist, to help municipalities understand how they can invest and become more conscious, more efficient. Another one was building energy use data in relation and data equity. So members of the team were in the data equity conversation, and just in general terms, council just talked about how the push to move into more net zero buildings and using technology, is there an equity gap being bigger equity gap being developed in our communities in relation to those that may struggle to have the opportunity to invest in their homes, for example. So another potential social hit to our communities, perhaps. Also, in relation to almost like a spin-off to what we've learned through the Energy Futures Lab, the senior leadership team introduced the concept of a staff lunch and learn, which from now on into the future, occasionally will host different staff engagements over the lunch period. Of course, buying food will maybe support the initiative. We had 40 staff members come recently to talk about the Aquatic Center. Really proud of the presentations through Director Kennedy and those in attendance asking questions and really understanding what that project is. So future conversations will occur with special projects, but also maybe internal systems developments or anything that comes to mind. So really successful idea. Also, the staff were in attendance at a few different functions, one being the Rotary Friendship Dinner last week, and then also staff put on through Community Services through Director Jenkins' department, the Community Awards Night, which was a great evening last Friday. Yeah, and the report indicates I'll be at the Hydrogen Convention even tonight and back on Thursday night. Some of the focus areas that can be busy over the last couple of weeks has been the environmental waste to heat communications plan, the elected officials engagements, you've been quite busy. Council, industrial subdivision planning with Fortis, staff recruitment and council's, the build out of council's strategic priorities. So if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. CEO Becker, could somebody please make a motion that we accept this report as information?
I'd like to make that motion, Mayor Barkley.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceras. Does anybody have any questions for our CEO? No? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And we will move on to 5.2, vehicle noise. And is Manager Leith here to present on that? So welcome.
So the purpose of the report is to provide information on dealing with vehicle noise and potential for enforcement. The City of Red Deer in 2011 first started looking at vehicle noise following in the path of Edmonton's pilot programs in 2010 dealing with motorcycle noise. In May of 2022, the City of Red Deer revised their community standards bylaw to enable them to tackle the hundreds of complaints received during warmer months relating to excessively noisy motor vehicles. The City of Red Deer's community standards bylaw was amended to address the excessive vehicle noise by setting acceptable decibel levels for vehicles whilst idle and whilst at speed greater than idle, from 92 decibels to 96 decibels, respectively. Readings are taken using a decibel meter at a distance of 50 centimetres at idle whilst running whilst above the idle. The limits were determined by reviewing medical literature to safe noise exposure levels as well as other municipal bylaws. Tickets for excessive noise start at $250 for first offence and increase to $500 for second offence and $1,000 for third offence. In 2020, Edmonton Police Service launched a programme to curb vehicle noise, Project Tensor. The aim primarily was to address concerns of motorcycle noise on the White Ave in the evenings. The first few months of COVID-19 pandemic saw an increase in traffic-related complaints and vehicle noise concerns in 2021. Edmonton Police peace officers issued 708 vehicle noise-related tickets compared to 138 tickets in 2020 and 72 in 2019. The use of noise radar technology was taken out of the officers and the officers rely on traffic stops for enforcement. Calgary traffic bylaw includes objectionable noise from a vehicle in motion set at 96 decibels. Municipalities can use noise bylaws provision of the noise, the noise bylaw provisions or the provision of the Alberta Traffic Safety Act to address excessive noise. The regulations made under the Traffic Safety Act that are applicable to which vehicle noise include Section 61, prohibits mufflers that create excessive noise, produce flames, sparks, or prohibits widening exhaust outlets, and prohibits devices attached to exhaust systems or mufflers that increase vehicle noise. Section 82 prohibits emitting loud or unnecessary noise from a vehicle or any part of it, or from anything of substance that the vehicle or part of the vehicle comes into contact with. Section 87 prohibits the driving of a motor vehicle in a residential area in a manner that disturbs residents between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. It's noted that the cities have had some successes with charges laid. So the challenges with enforcement: complaints received and the vehicle is no longer at the location reported. Second-hand information is not considered evidence in court. Asking the driver to run the vehicle over idle is requiring them to potentially incriminate themselves. Service level expectations: the tool could be used during check stop operations with potential for other traffic stops if noise issues are identified. Potential that manufacturer specifications on high-performance vehicles may exceed the decibels set within the bylaw, and potential changes. That the tools already exist within the Traffic Safety Act. Purchase of equipment and calibration: so decibel meters are approximately $850 with calibration costs of around $100 per unit, and it's anticipated that we would purchase 2 for CPOs and 2 for RCMP. Roll it down. So this is the enforcement model in consideration with RCMP. So I sat with Staff Sergeant Imey, and this is what we came. Idling at winter time, no action, no action. Passing the vehicle and public complaint, again, no action. Identified during check stop, noise assessment and enforcement, and again, from the peace officers, exactly the same. Identified during force operations for noisy vehicles, and again, enforcement on both sides. Moving traffic stop violation, noise assessment and enforcement, and again, enforcement on both sides.
Okay, thank you, Manager Leith. Would it be helpful to you to have the decibel readers?
I believe from consulting the traffic officers at the detachment, they're not really of benefit. The Traffic Safety Act is quite clear, and if the officer determines at the time that the noise is excessive or any of those violations occur, then they would lay charges.
Okay, okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions? Councillor Bates?
Well, yeah, I guess I kind of brought some of this up some time ago. And the concern I have is just, and I can see the traffic enforcement is, it's not just challenges, it's a can of worms, the enforcement. But what I object to is when I'm standing on the street in Innisfail trying to have a conversation with somebody, and all of a sudden there's the odd person goes by, and just, it is beyond excessive. I mean, it's, I'm sure it is probably harmful to hearing, in addition to the fact that it's not even pleasant to be on the street or in the town. And I can't imagine some of the outdoor patios are probably plagued by that. So I don't want to do nothing. I'm not sure what we should do, because I see the challenges you're outlining. I'm wondering if we shouldn't perhaps invest in 1 or 2 meters and at least have them available to check a specific situation. That's not like they would be an insurmountable cost. And then I'd like to know what the criteria is for how does an officer decide whether or not he chooses to lay a noise complaint if he doesn't have a measure, just purely his annoyance level of what he heard, or how does that work?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bates, an example I could give is somebody who has either modified or has no exhaust system currently fitted to the vehicle. an incident quite recently where an individual was waiting for a repair on that vehicle. He was stopped by the officer and given a warning that that vehicle had to be repaired and brought back into a suitable measure, which was the reinstallation of a muffler to the vehicle. And we received compliance for that. So that, if that sort of gives an example of how that's been used.
Okay, well, thank you. Like I said, I see the problems here and don't want to create huge problems, but I don't want to, I guess I don't want to ignore this. I want to keep following Edmonton, who seems to be leading the pack now as far as what they're doing. If I had a concrete, I think we don't have to decide today, but I think we should consider buying a couple of the meters, just so that we can educate ourselves how bad some of them are. And I truly believe that some of them are modified in a way that they make more noise than even no muffler and all the other, what is it, blowing coal when you step on the diesel and you can't even see the car behind you. And to me, it's just another, it seems to have gotten worse during COVID, that people want to make a statement as they leave an intersection or whatever, and it's not pleasant for any of us.
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor Bates. I hear a lot about noise issues, or perception of noise issues anyway, and I know in the past we've had a circumstance where it seemed to be difficult to do anything because we didn't have the decibel readers, so I would like to see us purchase a couple, you know, and maybe they're implemented along with speed control, that kind of thing. I can give you an example. Yesterday I was leaving Centennial Park, probably 11 in the morning, and I heard this vehicle and looked around. You hear the vehicle but not see it. Then all of a sudden you see this vehicle flying down the hill, down below the cemetery, and loud, dangerous. And now I know nobody's there to do anything about that, and I didn't think it was appropriate for the mayor to do a UE in the middle of the street and start chasing them, of course, but just kidding. But I know how, you know, we hear this over and over and over again. I hear it along there, 60th Avenue, 42nd Street. So I guess I'm looking for advice as to how we can, you know, start to clamp down on some of this. And I agree with Councillor Bates, like you're standing talking to somebody and the noise sometimes is just overbearing, or like there was a ceremony at the cenotaph, well, back in November, obviously, and the noise from some of the vehicles was just unbearable and disrespectful at the same time. So I'm not sure what to do about it, Manager Lee, so maybe at some point you could come back and maybe Sergeant or Staff Sergeant Imey and give us some ideas.
Yeah, Your Worship, I think with this, there's no one answer is going to turn around and resolve our problems, and Centennial Park is a good example of that. We're working on different options, and certainly I know you, Council, are aware that on May 12th we're going to have a barbecue there to interact, hopefully, with the residents there, and the importance of reporting incidents. And that's the focus. If they don't correctly report the incident, then it makes it far harder for us. We've been able to identify recently a handful of individuals which are creating or contributing to the problems there, and we will continue to work towards resolving that problem now we have them identified. So that's the key messaging from me, and the tools we need is, yeah, there's certain engineered controls. We put the barriers in to turn around and restrict their ability to stunt in the parking lot. We also, you know, ask residents to turn around and report these things so we can actually identify individuals through the camera system, and then we follow up with that and result in either charges being laid or cautions or warnings to change that behavior.
But with noisy vehicles, though, what you're saying that, I mean, it's difficult to report, right? If you see somebody speeding down 60th, for example, and it's noisy, are you saying that a resident can call that in, even though They may not have a plate, they may have a vehicle description. Who says it's noisy? You know, that's an opinion.
Your Worship, yeah, if we see the trends that they're saying that the vehicles are noisy, certainly one of the vehicles that was involved where the cameras picked up plates on that, we can have evidence of stunting based upon the activities that they're doing.
Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Through to Manager Leith. Thank you for your backgrounder on this. You do refer in this document to the City of Red Deer's Community Standards Bylaw. You've talked about Edmonton. I would be interested when you come back to learn if there's more heft we can put into our own Community Standards Bylaw relative to this. I think that we've had this discussion about that darn bylaw before. It's like there's so many things in it, but what those things do is they provide tools for our bylaw officers to be able, and RCMP to be able to act on our behalf when we need them to. So if this is a bylaw issue for council, I think we should have that conversation.
CO Becker.
Just to help with the dialogue, council, and to Manager Leith, what I'm hearing is that council wishes to advance conversation regarding this and what the managers provided to you, and obviously apply additional meat to the current bylaw, and to get into more specific decibel readings, whether it's 96 dBA, and then the ability to enforce that, whether it's a check stop mechanism. You know, it may result in future budgetary conversations on additional enforcement mechanisms, but I don't want to go there today. Just, and that's what I'm hearing is let's do a little bit more work on this and move towards application of a program similar to what you're reading.
Yes.
Okay.
Councillor Bates.
I just had another thought just listening. So the decimeter, will it give you an appropriate reading if you're not right near the, like if, what comes to me is perhaps if we could get one or not even the same kind of one and do our own little study, sit on somebody's restaurant outdoor patio and see what the decibels are and relate that to health and to what is considered to be appropriate in a community. Just to see, you know, maybe my ears are more sensitive than I think they are. I do use a hearing aid. I actually just put it in today, but I still think maybe baby steps, maybe we keep aware of because like I say, I don't have to stand out on the street very long to not be able to talk to the person beside me till that vehicle passes, it seems like. And it probably will get worse in the summer, but it wasn't great in the winter either.
Just for clarity, just council wish to advance this like quickly is a priority for administration to come back to you with potential amendments to the bylaw and finalizing costing to the readers.
Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. The answer to that question, I would suggest yes, fairly quickly. But I want to go back to Councillor Bates's comment on a different meter for the different circumstances. I know when we were doing our C of R, our hazard reduction or our hazard assessments for our activities, there must have been some note of decibel readings associated with certain activities. So do we have a decibel reader now somewhere within our organization? And the reason I ask is when I was with my previous life, we used to, every one of our activities, we did a decibel reading, helicopters, chainsaws, power pumps, and it's just a meter that you hold. And that might suffice to give some baseline data for where Councillor Bates is, where his question's going, that we could, on a Friday night, sit at Petro's and with that. So I guess the question that I have is, do we have one already that it's not the same as what we're referring to in the backgrounder here from Manager Leith, but do we have
So, Your Worship, through to Councillor Harrison, yes, there is one currently for workplace noise assessments to see what level of PPE, if required, for certain work activities, such as operating chainsaws, pumps, etc. So, yes, there is a decibel meter here in the
So
town.
would that suffice to sort of start off with Councillor Bates's question around, we put it on 50th and 50th?
I don't have the level of technical expertise to
Okay.
say whether that device would be seen as the most for a community noise assessment. We would have to research that.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do would be to, let's make a motion to ask administration to come back with a plan for us, and, you know, we can't hash out the plan here, so.
Yeah, that'd be a question of council. Do you need more baseline data to understand that there's noise concerns? Or what I'm hearing is council already has a baseline understanding that there's noise issues
Yes.
in our community. Where they sit on the decibel readings, we can go do the data collection, but what you're hearing likely and what you're saying is that we have noise vehicle issues.
Yes,
Getting lots of yeses. to
yes,
this,
we
too.
do.
I would make that motion, Mayor Barkley.
Councillor Bates?
Well, I was just going to add that since we started discussing this, maybe 3, 4, 5 months ago, I've had a few citizens. Are you doing anything yet? Are you doing anything yet? So people are aware.
So how would you like the motion to look, CEO Becker, that's clear for you?
So, Mayor Barkley, the council, and we'll look over to the manager too, is likely a motion in reference to bring back the amending bylaw to the current community standards bylaw that reflects the application of noise parameters for council to review, something in that relevance.
Okay.
So it starts with the bylaw, Manager Leith, and then obviously we'd purchase tools and find the budget to buy the decibel readers. And if there's anything more in of logistics, we would certainly add that into the reporting, but Gary, does that make sense on your side?
Yeah, I think something similar to the wording within Red Deer is that's quite specific, and the measurement tools that they use are very specific, which will avoid the potential legal challenges when charges are laid. So,
Okay. Okay. Who would?
I'm
Councillor
still
Wing.
prepared to make that
Okay.
motion.
All right, thank
Please.
you. Okay, so Councillor Wing will make that motion. Any further discussion? No? Okay, all in favor? Right. Carried, thank you. Thank you, Manager Leith. We'll move into item 5.3, Council Action Control. And when you're ready, I'll have somebody please make a motion that we accept this as information.
I'll move that we accept this as information.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceras. Get that out right. Anyone have any comments about anything on here? If not, all in favor? Okay, carried, thank you. And we'll move into 5.4 with CEO Becker on our strategic priorities.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Council, this is just to firm up your priorities that you've reviewed over the course of time. A few weeks ago, at the Agenda and Priorities Committee meeting, what administration heard is what we outlined on the chart that's accompanying this RFD. Just to, if you go down to the next page, please. Just to highlight your priorities, and please add in, even on the wording, the Varma Waste Energy Project, discussion with Varma to develop a potential project in Innisfil valued at $150 to $200 million in relation to diverting waste. That's one of your highest priorities. Number 2 priorities is the government relations strategy. And then the third, tax policy review priority. Again, there's numerous other priorities, but these are, again, the primary focus areas of administration in support with you. So going down to support your priorities, Council, would lead into the CAO focus areas, that being inclusion of the community safety and well-being plan, which we're going to meet, I think, next week, administration, to roll out the RFQ that you approved quite some time ago. The idea with that is to, as you've advanced conversation regarding housing, you talked about mental health of the community several months ago. And we talked with RCMP and Protective Services as early as today even. So we're trying to make sure we don't lose opportunity to pull in as many layers to our community as possible within one plan. Again, support the environmental waste and energy program that is on the administrative side is to help with the communication linkages, which we're doing right now with Pharma. The government relations strategy is to be more specifically to my role here as CAO is to draft a framework for you to consider and to modify it based on your liking. So in the near future, I'll come to you at an AMP likely a meeting and throw at you a framework, and you can bend it and adjust it the way you feel would work for you. And the addition, the Innisfil Energy Hub Community Conversations, which that plan in relation to the Energy Hub is going to go in front of the Economic Development Committee on Thursday. And just to add into, I can just keep going if you want, guys. Corporate services primary focus based on your feedback is to advance the review and development of a tax policy outside of a traditional tax policy, which council has the ability to apply new changes to the Municipal Government Act, which we want to pull all that data information for you to consider, and hopefully we can have it complete to you prior to the next tax season, I guess you could say. The application, the build out of the reserves policy, investment policy, RFP, our corporate services highest priorities with many other priorities. Operationally, council has moved and give direction to, which will come to you formally in a couple of weeks, the Aquatic Center projects. So operations department through Stephen is working now on how do we move into the building a funding model. But also we want to have you approve the validation report in 2 weeks' time. The procurements for capital projects are still signing contracts, which you have approved. And of course, the Southwest Industrial Park development is advancing per this construction season, as well as the planning of a potential solar farm development in that vicinity with your guidance and approval too. Asset management is one of your primary focuses, and asset management is at the attention of operations departments. Community services is really busy with housing, with a session tomorrow night, but there's a lot of play, a lot of action associated with housing. As you can see the list on the outputs, and that's for really a balance of this year into next year. The evaluation of becoming an energy retailer, what that means for us if we wish to advance that. The Southwest Industrial Land sales, so marketing of the industrial lands, and of course the climate sustainability, which is a grant and a study of looking at emissions within our community. So really, council, it's a review quick. If there's any questions, but just looking to formalize the priorities. They'll come back to you as you like, but formally back to you in the second quarter. I think we're moving into second quarter now, so towards the end of second quarter, you'll see this formally once again.
Okay, thank you, CEO Becker. Could I please have someone make the motion? Councillor Harrison.
I so move, Mayor Barkley, the council approves the strategic priorities chart as of April 24th, 2023.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any adjustments to those priorities? We've been through them a few times now, so no, all good. Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried, thank you. All right, and we will move into 6.1 with Director Kennedy on the Cannon Park and Max Playground contracts.
Thanks, Mayor Barkley. So in front of you, we have two recommended motions. So the voting for the two playgrounds closed on April 7th. We did do the voting through SurveyMonkey again, as well as through the Innisfil Trade Show on March 31st, April 1st. So below we have the Cannon Park results. Park and Play had 221 votes, and the Kid Nation one had 216. So very close choice there to go with Park and Play. For the Max Kinsman Park, PlayQuest came in at 345, where the playground guys came in at 87. So recommendation there is to go with PlayQuest for that playground. So it is our recommendation to go ahead with those two as per the surveys. Each project, we are recommending carrying $10,000 for landscaping as well as the naming rock for each playground as well, to be consistent. Both putting those projects within the budgets that were set in forward. So in front of you, I do have two motions for council.
Okay, thank you. Director Kennedy, could I please have someone make the first motion? Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Put forth that Calgary approves the award of the Cannon Park Playground contract to Park and Play Design for $139,729.98 to be funded from the Recreation and Culture Reserve.
Okay, thank you. Director Kennedy, I just want to double check. These are both accessible, right?
So they are a partial accessible playground. So the difference between those is, as we presented with the one for Cannon, is with there's features that are accessible. We had partial accessibility within the port in place, but the structures themselves aren't necessarily fully accessible. We're trying to make a mixture of partial accessibility to keep involvement, as well as keeping the most we can for all of the structures. So I'm calling it partial accessibility, not full accessible,
Okay.
not like the arena playground.
Okay. Councillor Bates?
I do have one question. The naming rock that's going to be for each, what about the name? Are we going to potentially, what are we calling them? The Cannon Park and Max Playground, or what
Councillor Bates, yeah, that's the names that we have on record, so I guess that's the names unless council wants to.
Well, I think we
Look
should
at something
reconsider Max Playground for sure. I'm not sure. There might be an opportunity even to get a little sponsorship out of it, but the Max hasn't been there for many years, and I don't think we owe them anything. I'm sorry I jumped to the second one, but yeah, I was just curious what the name would be on the rock.
Yeah, I think we should take a look at that, particularly for that playground for sure. And also, is this is Kinsman involved in these playgrounds as well?
Yes, both
Okay.
playgrounds will be doing, the installation will be with the Kinsman Club
Okay,
again.
and is there a grant being applied for?
They applied for the Cannon Playground
Okay.
for the CFIP grant, yep.
Okay.
So Kinsman's already had that applied for.
Okay, thank you. Has it already gone in, Director Kennedy?
It has.
Okay, okay. I would just say you can reach out to the MLA's office, well, this week, I guess, for a letter of support
Right.
when we're doing CFIPs.
That's-
That
Mayor-
was brought forward the other day to me, so,
But my understanding was that the president at the time of the Kinsman did reach out to the MLA.
Perfect.
When he
Okay.
did the application.
okay.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so, Councillor Dunham, sorry, I
Thank you,
can't
Mayor
see your
Barkley.
light.
I think a few of us were on a thread there through Facebook. There was some chatter on Facebook and social media about how accessible these playgrounds are. I had sent an email to CAO Becker regarding that, coming back with today would be an opportunity for us to look further into this, because I know that a number of people are asking for something that is more accessible, and I realize that we have a budget and we have just put forth the motion towards that budget, but is there an opportunity for us to look exactly which pieces, beyond just the fact that you can bring a carriage or a wheelchair in, for children, say perhaps in a wheelchair, to actually be able to utilize them? Is this a point where we can look into that further and be able to, if we cannot do that within this budget, then be able to have some sort of answer for the community as to why we would not be able to?
So, Mayor Barkley, Councillor Dunham, and bringing it Stephen, the conversation is, my understanding is we have a budget. However, it's not too late to modify within the budget some of the structures within. So it's really council, if you wish to add in additional accessible components, you can certainly provide that direction. Maintain that budget, we can come back. It's not too late to come back to you and say we can make some adaptions to this if that's what council wishes. Director, is that?
Yep.
Yeah, I think the initial discussion we had was we wanted the playgrounds to be accessible, fully accessible. So, because we started off not being accessible, so I thought that was the direction we had provided.
So to my Bark, so in February, we came to you with the Cannon Park Playground 2 options, and we actually had unaccessible with partially accessible option. The one that was approved and went to the public was the partially approved option that was presented to council back in February.
Okay.
So yeah, we can definitely come back though with, if we want to award to Park and Play and just ask for maybe some more accessible options. Like I can definitely come back with you.
Okay, what do you think, Councillor Wing?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thanks, Mayor Barkley. Yeah, I would encourage us to ask for a little bit more information and have some more options available to us. I think I'd like to hear a little bit more from actually both of these particular companies as far as what the philosophy is relative to accessibility. I know in the communication and some of the conversations in the community, there's been lots of pointing at the one fully accessible playground in Red Deer. They're very expensive, and that's not an excuse to not do it. However, it took Rotary 5 years in Red Deer to raise enough money to contribute their portion of the money for that accessible playground. And as we know from our conversations earlier with the schools relative to their playground equipment, schools are not allowed to use their operating budgets to build playgrounds. So it's definitely a conversation I think we as a community have to have so that we can be sure that our students, our children, the people in our community, our seniors, anybody that has accessibility problems has the opportunities. Can we afford to do them at every single playground? I don't know, but until we have that conversation, I don't think we can make that decision. So I would like to see more options available for these particular parks if possible. Thank you.
Councillor Maceros?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley, through to Director Kennedy. Can you please just explain in a little bit more detail what the partially accessible piece means?
Yep, for sure. So really what we were looking for is incorporating a mixture of accessible and call it unaccessible features. So having a mixture. So yeah, like the main structure itself might not be accessible, but there are features within Cannon Park, for instance, that have the accessible swing. It has features that just you can go up to and touch, the audible ones. So tried to make it so that they were still incorporating in the structure itself into the features. So yeah, not to say that we can't modify them so that they're structures. It just makes it, with the limited budget, that the structures will be a lot less elevated. There'll be a lot more because you got to get a wheelchair up into them. So it restricts our flexibility in making the number of structures that we'll have. So we can definitely come back to you with a fully accessible option, and then you can compare this one with partially accessible versus a fully accessible. And we can, all of the playground designers have criteria that they use when it comes to fully accessible, and that's what they used when we did the arena playground. It's like there's certain criteria that they need to set. There's a lot. We gave them more restriction or less restriction on these ones because of the partial part of it. So that gave us a little more flexibility in the structures.
Okay, so Director Kennedy, would you like us to award this and then you would come back with potential add-ons? I mean, we know what the cost is to the fully accessible playground down by the arena, and these two playgrounds were like $400,000 less doing, right? So, certainly cost does come into play, and I fully understand what you're saying, so I don't want to not move forward with this if you feel that there's components that can be added.
Yeah, right. So what we can do is we have a budget. So we have that $140,000 budget. We can go to them and say, get us a fully accessible for $140,000. And what does that look like? And that's what we can present to you.
Okay.
So that we're not changing the budgets. They know that they need to hit the targets. And then come back and we can kind of look at the two and,
Yeah, like I also think on that note, you know, looking at fully accessible, and if the playground is a quarter the size because it's fully accessible, then maybe we're
Yeah.
better to incorporate both. But Councillor Bates?
So what occurred to me, that I don't know what fully accessible is, and I understand I fully understand the desire to have something that's still challenging to some of the other kids too. Is it possible, like, obviously the word fully accessible gravitates to, yeah, that's what I want, you know, that's the right thing, but I'm sure there's some level of impairment that even a fully accessible playground, that somebody can't do things on it. And so it's finding that, you know, balance of trying to be accessible to almost everybody, not knowing what the impairment might be for the person that can't even play on a fully accessible playground.
and I guess that's why we went with the route of partially accessible and
Yeah.
titling them that way, is because we knew they're not fully accessible.
Right.
Yep.
Let's go with the suggestion, but I'm sympathizing with still trying to keep some, realizing that it may not be 100% to everybody accessible.
Yeah, I don't think cost will, you know, we know that already between what we did at the school, or what we did at the arena, and the school came to us for something that was $100,000 more than what we did at the arena, so I can't imagine what we would get. So what would you like to do, council? Do you want to move forward, or are you happy with what you heard and satisfied, or would you like more information? Councillor Dunham?
Mayor Barkley, thank you. I'd personally like to see a little bit more, maybe a couple of pieces of fully accessible within what is there, what could kind of come into budget, and then proceed from there. And I think, you know, we're a community of 7,900 people. We're a small town. We can't put an accessible park in every corner of the town. And I think people understand that. It's just trying to at least make it that much more, that better than it was before. And so that's why I'd like to see it move forward with that, please.
So did you want either awarded?
I'd say for the second one, for the Max
Okay.
Playground, for that, personally, I'd see like that one awarded, and then for the first one for Cannon Park to come back with something more.
Okay. Would you like a motion, CEO Becker, for the first then, to come back with more information? And
Yeah, I believe there is a motion for the first one,
is,
so
yeah.
over the motion, do they consider either to table further information or move to pass it or defeat it?
Okay.
Either one's good.
Okay, yeah,
Please.
okay.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. If we could table it, please, until we have some more information, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of tabling the first motion? Okay, carried. And then we'll have somebody make the second motion, please.
Mayor Barkley, I would move that council approve the award of the Max Playground contract to PlayQuest Recreation for $89,706.78 to be funded from the Recreation and Culture Reserve.
Okay, thank you. And we understand this is partially accessible as well, correct? Okay, we're okay with that?
And do we want to include that we're going to rename the playground in the motion? Like, please find an alternative name for that playground. It was, I think, I've been here long enough to say it was purely just a wayfinding thing with the families down there, right? Let's go to the Max Playground, but not an official name.
Well, not quite Raspberry Park, but yeah. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I just asked the question, what's the difference between the Max Playground and the Cannon Playground? Fully accessible, partially accessible. One, we're getting more information for fully accessible. Why wouldn't we do that for the Cannon? You know, if we're going to do this, let's get it for both.
Okay, well, we can table both motions. Okay, like to
Mayor
do that?
Barkley, would we consider please tabling that motion?
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay. We will move on to 6.2 with the 2023 surface improvements contract with Director Kennedy.
Thanks, Mayor Barkley. So, yeah, we are looking to award the construction contract for the 2023 surface improvements. This project entails 5 areas that we're working on. 40th Street, we require some surface replacement as well as some minor curb and sidewalk. 42nd Street, this is a new sidewalk and multi-use trail connecting the Bella Vista subdivision to 60th Avenue. This project will allow us to approach Alberta Transportation for the speed reduction and pedestrian crossing on the highway. Third project area is replacement of paved lanes within the West Park and Napoleon Lake areas. Trail replacements along the Napoleon Sports Fields in Stramont Park. And 40th Street close, we are looking to do that close as well as some sanitary main replacement for there. The tender of the project closed on April 4th, where 3 contractors submitted bids. Border paving is a low bid at $900,032. Tender evaluation was completed by Tagish Engineering, where they didn't see any items of unbalanced in comparing to the other bids, so it is their recommendation to award to Border Paving. Total project cost is anticipated to be $1,081,671, which includes engineering, testing, construction, and contingency of 10%. The project itself will be funded from the wastewater reserve as well as the MSI fund. So we are looking for a motion to award the project to Border Paving.
Okay, thank you, Director Kennedy. Nice to see that come well under budget, so that's good. Could I please have someone make the recommended motion?
Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion. The council approves the award of the 2023 surface improvements contract to Border Paving Limited for $932,000.34 to be funded from the wastewater reserve and MSI fund.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Bates?
I just have one question. Is there a portion of this paving that is associated with wastewater reserve?
Yeah, the 40th Street close has a sanitary mains that are being replaced.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the motion? All right, carried. And we will move on to 6.3 with Director Kennedy on the Innisfail Cemetery.
Thanks again. So, yeah, we're just here to provide council an update on the status of the cemetery. So the following is a summary of the inventory remaining at the existing cemetery. We have the Columbarium, 25 niches left. There are only 2 spaces left for the Columbarium structures. Each structure has a total of 64. Cremation plots, we have 42 cremation plots left with room for another 168. Full burial plots, we have 60 full burial plots left with a room for another 92. We did receive 2 quotes for columbariums. Sunset Memorial and Stone came in at $31,144. So as the space is becoming more limited, we would like to proceed with the design on the first phase of the infill as proposed in the report provided to council in 2020. We propose starting on the central section as shown in the highlighted area. Once the design is complete, we will come back, or we will do the cost estimating and include this list on the capital projects for 2024. Cost for the columbarium will be funded from the cemetery reserve, leaving it with a balance of just over $46,000. And the design will be funded from the general cap reserve, leaving it with a balance of about $1.2 million. So we are looking for 2 motions from council.
Okay, thank you, Director Kennedy. Could I please have someone make the first motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barkley. That council approve the purchase of the new columbarium for the purchase price of $31,144 from Sunset Memorial and Stone Limited, funded from the cemetery reserve.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maceras. Any discussion
One question.
or questions? Councillor Bates?
One question I have, so that's just to purchase the columbarium, there's no plan to dress up some of the shrubbery and stuff around the current columbarium?
No, just the columbarium.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion, questions? No? Okay, all in favor? All right, carried. And then have somebody please make the second motion.
I'll move that council approve, directs administration, I guess, to proceed with the design of the first phase of the central section infill for the estimated cost of $15,000 to be funded from the general capital reserve.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bates. Any questions about that? All in favor? Okay, thank you. May I just ask one question on page 37 of 144? Refers to the memorial end wall. Are those on the end of the columbariums? That's, so, like, are they only on new columbariums that we're getting, or just in a new section, or is there something that could be put on the end of the existing ones?
They're proposed on the new,
Okay,
it'd be in the new columbarium area.
okay. Just it's something that people keep asking about, and is it possible to put them on existing, or is it just a different style that comes?
Yeah, I believe
Don't
it's
know?
a different
Yeah.
style, because
Okay.
we did have a number of questions in regards to when we were getting quotes for the ones
Okay.
that we have,
Okay,
as being a more specific type.
yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to,
Mayor Barkley,
oh, I'm sorry, Councillor
I just have a
Harrison.
question through to Director Kennedy. I know some time ago we talked about dressing up the entrance to the cemetery. Is this part of this, or is that going to be, are you going to bring that back to us with a class, put the new gate in?
Yeah, at this stage, we were looking at just the crematorium area, just to get that so that we have some more inventory. And then we could come back to you at another phase in regards to, the parking and the entrance gate and everything. We can come back, we'll see how the design goes, maybe we can incorporate it in all of this, but, yep.
Okay, as long as we come
Be
back,
part.
because every time I drive by the cemetery, I look at that gate and we need to do something there. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to 7.1 with Director Vickers and the 2022 audited financial statements.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barkley. So in continuation of the delegation that was here previous, we did present, or the auditors presented our 2022 audited financial statements, where we did receive a good opinion. So I am looking to have the two motions done. So the first one, we do need to approve the 2022 audited financial statements before they get submitted to the government. As well, we also have to get our financial information return, or the FIR is what we would call it, as well, approved by council.
Okay, thank you, Director Vickers. Could I please have someone make a motion to approve the audited financial statements for 2022? Councillor Dunham?
Mayor Barclay will make the motion. The council approves the 2022 audited financial statements.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. And second motion, please.
Mayor Barkley, I'll move that council approves the 2022 Alberta Financial Information Return.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
Mayor Barkley, as you advance, if I could just state, I think I do this annually, and I try to give them a little bit more kudos than just annually, but just want to acknowledge corporate services, but also community services and operations, and really supporting staff. On your biggest policy is budget, to have another solid audited financial statement, just kudos to the team and their dedication.
Yeah, no, very well said, and I'm sure council seconds that, and we appreciate all the work you've put in over the last few months. Year, probably almost time to start again, right?
Almost, yeah.
Start again on the budget now.
Yeah, the budget at least, yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll move on to 7.2, request for a decision, 2022 fourth quarter financials and surplus allocation.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barkley. So each year, administration presents quarterly financials for council to review and approve. The financials currently being presented are for the fourth quarter of 22, January 1st to December 31st, cumulative. Administration has reviewed the financial information being presented. The actual figures have been compared to the approved final budget for the year. The 2022 final budget was approved on December 13th, 2021. And administration believes this to be a true representation of the state of the financials as of December 31st. So the financials are indicating the following. So under our revenue, so the financials are showing an increase of revenue of approximately $122,000. So some of the contributing factors, now it did go up and down. There was some under, some over, but these were some of the big overages that created that. So the big one was our investment revenue. So that was increased by just over $227,000 in 2022, and that was just due to the increased interest rates that we were receiving. So our increased permit and application fees was just over $46,000. We can tell that we did have a full-time employee at that time, which could help contribute to that increase in revenue. We had increased cemetery sales of just shy of $37,000, noted by the previous report that we need to buy a new Columbarium. As well as increased sale of just goods and services. So those are things that we would do ourselves. So even at the pool and the arena, those are all considered goods and services, of an increase of $124,000. And our expenses, we actually, that also helped. We had a decrease of our overall expenses by just over $284,000. So some of those contributing factors were, so our total contracted and general services came under by $356,000. And two of the big ones in there was our repairs and maintenance was under budget by $145,000. And our contracted services was also under budget by $187,000. Now, some of that money is being carried over in this year for certain projects that were not completed. And our salaries and benefits were under budget by right around that $104,000. So then the surplus is as follows. So we have the increased revenue of $122,000, our decreased expenses of $284,000, and then our unspent contingency of $78,000, which leaves our surplus sitting at $486,000 and $486.35. Sorry. Administration is recommending that this surplus be allocated in its entirety to the facility reserve to help fund the future aquatic center or whatever that building may look like in the end. So our opening reserves for 2022 was just over $17 million with an ending balance of just under $12 million. Now this does seem like a lot coming out. We did pull out $7.2 million out of our reserves this year to fund some projects. And our transfers into reserves was just shy of that $2.1 million. However, funds were taken out of the reserves to build the Hazelwood houses, and we have not yet recognized that revenue yet. So as soon as that does, we will be reimbursing that as well as funds have been taken out to cover the Southwest Industrial and Solar projects. We're just waiting for that debenture to go through, and then we'll be reimbursing that as well. So it may look like they're a little low, but they will get reimbursed by just shy of $3 million as well this year. So some of the capital projects that we did not get finished this year and do have to be carried over for 2023. And some of these could be as simple as some landscaping, or even just that the financial side, maybe the project was officially completed, but we weren't invoiced until March or something like that. So the 2022 surface improvements, our alarm system upgrade, our aquatic center, like even the arena playground, that is basically done. We have some minor landscaping to do this year, and it will get finished off of our books next year. Ball Diamond 7 upgrades is still sitting outstanding. Our CCT camera system for our utilities department, the CP rail crossing, Dodds Lake Design, Eastgate Lift Station, our energy conservation measures around town, the Hazelwood houses, library lighting, our Max Playground, outdoor rink, our 2 Southwest projects, and a wayfinding project. So those are carryover projects that we're still looking at doing this year. But some of the ones that we finished in 2022 is, so we did the recycle bins. We were able to get the library floors completed. Our SCBA replacement for our fire department was completed this year. Our dash cam system for our peace officers. The arena dehumidifier, the arena condenser, and the arena refrigeration system were all completed. We finished up the generator, new generator at Reservoir 2, our liquid chlorine production unit, the irrigation at all the ball diamonds, so 5 to 8, even though ball diamond 7 was done separately, we redid the irrigation for that entire ball diamonds. Our zero-turn mower, the paste ban was completed in 22 officially, and dump trailer, the heliport, some entrance planters, at the entrance of the town here. Our sound wall was completed, and we did do our 50th Street manhole replacements. So lots of projects completed. So yeah, if I have take any questions, if council has any questions, but if not, I am looking for council to accept the fourth quarter financials as presented, and as well as allocating the surplus to the facility reserve. Now, in order to finish the audit, I did have to make that entry, so it is sitting in our general cap reserve currently, and I will move it to wherever council identifies here today, so.
Okay, thank you, Director Vickers. Lots of work accomplished. Could I please have someone make the first motion?
I do have a question.
Do you want to make the motion then, have a question? Or will it affect the motion?
I don't think it'll affect it, but
Okay.
which would you like first?
Ask your question, it's okay.
I have two questions, actually. So the one was that created the surplus partially was decreased contracted services and some of them are carried over.
Mm-hmm.
So we have enough in the 2023 budget to cover them without needing to go back to those.
Yes, Mayor Barkley through to Councillor Bates. So those projects we identified, and we did, so this year we transferred to reserve in 22, and we're pulling from reserve that revenue in 23. So they are fully funded in this year.
Okay. And the other was the mention of the Southwest Industrial Servicing and the solar being funded. The solar, I'm just trying to refresh that's just a phase of it, is it not? It's not.
There's a very small, I think the dollar amount is around 20,000, just that engineering side of things
Right.
that was attributed to 2022. So it's not even the full project or anything yet.
Right. Okay, thank you. With that, I'll make the first motion. The council accepts the 2022 fourth quarter financials as presented.
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? No, all in favor? Okay, and then we'll have somebody please make the second motion for the allocation. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I move that council approves the allocation of the $486,035 surplus to the facility reserve.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about that? All in, Councillor Wing?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barkley. Through to Director Vickers. When we've had this conversation earlier, we were talking about this reserve. We talked about the RCMP back pay, and I'm not seeing it anywhere. So are we wanting to put everything into the facility reserve, or are we considering that we might need to have access to that money?
Yes, Mayor Barkley through to Councillor Wing. So what I was going to do is I was going to bring a budget adjustment for the $413,000 of the overage for the taxes and ask that you put $288,000 into a reserve for the RCMP to hold and the remainder to go to the facility reserve. I just didn't want to bring it tonight because it was already a large day, so I'll likely bring it at the next council meeting.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. And now 7.3, the Urban Hen Keeping Program.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barkley. So at the last council meeting, council did direct administration to draft a bylaw to establish a permanent urban hen program based on administration's recommendations and consideration of the public feedback that we received. So the attached draft urban hen keeping bylaw is provided for council's consideration, and the bylaw retains the provisions of the 2-year pilot program with the following changes. So the neighbor notification rather than consent. So public feedback included multiple comments that neighbor permission should not be required for the approval of an urban hen license. Administration agrees that neighbor consent should not be part of the urban hen program, and part of that is that you don't need to have your neighbor's permission to get a different animal that you have in your home. Why this one? So the draft bylaw includes a clause that adjacent neighbors will be notified by the town when a complete application is received, This will give the neighbors an opportunity to access the guidelines and regulations of the urban hen program and understand the requirements of the license that the license holder must follow, So capping the number of licenses. So it is administration's recommendations that if the number of licenses available is capped, then it should be capped at 20. Based on recent conversations with potential urban hen license holders, we anticipate seeing over 5 licenses in place following formal adoption of this program. It is preferable that administration not have to manage a lottery or deadline system to issue upcoming licenses or to keep residents on a wait list. Last week, the City of Red Deer Council were asked to remove their cap of 102 licenses for similar reasons. They had over 100 people on their wait list. So the license holder must reside at the property. So the draft bylaw now includes the provision that the urban hen license holder must reside on the property. So if a license holder moves away from a property, leaving the hens in the custody of a renter or occupants, a new application can be submitted by the current occupant to continue with the hens and coop on that property. So, but they would still have to go through that same application process and go through the course all on its own. As well, the fines and penalties that were listed in Schedule A have been increased to $250 at the recommendation of our Municipal Enforcement Department. So the program will be advertised in the community pending its approval. Current license holders will be communicated with directly to advise them to the changes of the program. So I'll take any questions council may have.
Okay, thanks. So maybe we'll have someone make first reading on the bylaw.
I would like to discuss it before we, but that's,
There's three readings. So let's do first reading, and then we'll have a discussion.
we can, but we just, about 4 subjects ago, had great discussions before we made motions. I just saying.
Mayor Barkley, I would move first reading, please, to approve bylaw 1710-2023, the urban hen keeping bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And we'll open it up for discussion, please. Councillor Maceros.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Through to Director Vickers. Just a couple of questions, and it relates to the license holder having to reside at the property. Can a home renter get a hen license?
Mayor Barkley, through to Councillor Maceros, yes, they can. They still have to follow the same procedure, fill out an application form, they have to have the test done, right? They have to go through the course as well.
So my follow-up question to that is, it was my impression that the clause here that is an answer to some of the comments that we got back was that the people who were renting the property that had the hen coop abandoned those hens. Was that the case? And if so, is there something that we need to do to address that?
So, Mayor Barkley, through to Councillor Mazzaro, so it is not my understanding that it was abandoned. This person lives in the property, still owns it to this day, and has been on a 6-month sabbatical away from home, and plans on returning and has renters in their home, taking care of the home and the animals.
Oh, I see, okay. And so in this case, would those new renters need to apply for a
That is
license?
correct.
Okay,
In this
okay.
case, then those people, upon notification that this person was leaving, then they would have to go through the same process in order to maintain the hens, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Bates.
So most of my concern was around the first modification of not having to get permission from adjacent landowners. And the only rationale that I've heard is that, that we had those comments and that we don't have that requirement for other animals. I don't believe there's bad chickens. I think there's bad owners, potentially. And I do look back at issues we've had in the town with respect to noise or fences or even the color of houses. Like, we've had all kinds of situations. I think the entire pilot was run with the provision that you did need to get permission. And I went through the 50 comments one by one, last night, and I found 4 that, everything from not a fan of needing the neighbor's permission to, I don't believe you should have to. I found 5 that specifically said, I don't want them next to me, and I do want to retain, well, it didn't, I'm paraphrasing now, it don't, and I, strangely enough, I found one that was absolutely pro-chicken person, saying they were still in favor of having that neighbor approval, and probably because they don't want to run the risk of a bad owner tainting the whole process. So my personal feeling, I can support everything there, including the number of coops, and but I would like to retain the permission, because I think it almost gives the flavor. The owner is notified that you're going to have a chicken coop next to you, and we'll give you all the reasons why you're wrong to not want it. And that it's almost like, yeah.
Well, and
Hopefully I've explained myself. I want to see us retain the requirement for.
correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Bates, but it seems to me last term, that's what made this quite palpable, was the fact that we did need to get, someone that did need to get neighbors' permissions, and I think that went a long ways with people.
I
making
think
it quite
overall
positive.
it broke the deadlock on council. It broke the resistance in the community. It made it all work, and I'm not aware of anybody during the pilot, maybe you are, that came in and said, you know, I can't get chickens because I can't convince my neighbor that I'm a good owner. And anyway, those are my feelings about it. I'd like to retain that.
Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I guess my perception of this is, my neighbor who gets a new cat doesn't have to come and ask my permission, and they can let their cat roam free and defecate and pee in my pots and my flower beds. Neighbor can get a second dog, and they can be in their backyard constantly barking. I've been around chickens my entire life. Hens, they make little noise, they make little mess. For me, I don't see the rationale behind getting neighbors' permission unless we're going to do it with all animals, because there's a lot more disruptive animals out there than a few hens. Other than that, I'm happy with the amendments to it.
Councillor Wing?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I would agree with Councillor Dunham. The permission piece is really a struggle for me. And I mean, so I might have one neighbor who would absolutely say no because there are issues relative to other activities or other situations as neighbors. And I have an empty house on the other side of me that's for sale. And then what happens if somebody moves in after I've got my coop and they say, well, you didn't ask for my permission? I think we have enough rules, and I think we have enough structure in the program to keep things moving in the right direction, that I think notification is preferable over consent. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I would agree. Notification, in my view, is quite sufficient. We've been at this pilot for almost 2 years, and we've got rules and regulations in place. I didn't hear many negative comments come back. So I think that the question I would have, in your research, Director Vickers, was there any other municipalities that needed that real strict rule about notifying your or not notifying, but getting permission? Are we the only one that did that?
So, Mayor Barkley, through to Councillor Harrison, I believe there was no one else had this same requirement, but was there anyone else? I'm pretty sure there was no other municipality. It was all, like, you didn't ask for permission.
Okay.
Either notification or nothing.
Okay, thank you. I guess in summation then, Mayor Barkley, I would certainly support the draft bylaw as written.
Okay, so we have first reading. So I'll ask all in favor and opposed. And I'm going to oppose too, based on the fact I would like to see neighbor notification still in the bylaw. So That was carried. You need to get neighbors' permission to have, so that's the reason I'm voting against. The rest I'm fine with. So that was carried, so we'll move on to second reading, please.
I'd so move that council give second reading to approve bylaw 1710-2023, the urban hen keeping bylaw.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, carried, and we will have someone give consideration to third reading.
I move that council give consideration to third reading to approve bylaw 1710-2023, the urban hen keeping bylaw.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, and opposed? Okay, carried, and we will move into third and final reading, please.
I don't think
Sorry.
we can.
Oh, no, we
I think
can't.
there's a
That's
point
right,
of
we
order.
can't.
We'll come back in 2 weeks, council.
Yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks, sorry, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we will move into 7.4 and the rates and fees bylaw.
Yeah, so Mayor Barkley, this was brought forward with the addition of the urban hens license fee. So there is a section in here for a camping permit as well, but would this be better suited to be tabled until after the urban hen
Sure.
bylaw is actually approved? Because then this would be the fee for the urban hen bylaw. So
Okay, so we'll just have a motion to table. Councillor Dunham.
Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion that we table.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And then we'll move on to Director Jenkins with the FCM Green Municipal Fund submission.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So we're looking to request council support for the submission of a Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund grant to undertake a net zero aquatic center feasibility study. So the FCM Green Municipal Fund Signature Initiative funding supports bold environmental projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions and protect the air, water, or land. The funding is designed to accommodate transformative, best-in-class municipal projects, meaning they're highly innovative and impactful. This program will potentially fund feasibility studies, pilot programs, and capital projects. And so in collaboration with Varma Energy, we did submit a pre-application form to the program to conduct a feasibility study that would determine the most economic and environmentally beneficial options available that could be added on at the aquatic center to move towards a net zero facility. So this feasibility study would focus on a few different potential options, one being to utilize the waste heat from the Varma Waste to Energy project to supplement the aquatic center. Another would be to looking at ground source geothermal energy, looking at other potential industrial waste heat sources in the area, including the arena, as well as solar, additional solar. So the facility already proposes roof-mounted solar, but whether you looked at adjacent ground mount array to address that. So the total estimated cost for this feasibility study is $172,000. Through the Green Municipal Fund, they would fund up to 50% of that. So following the submission of the pre-application materials, we have been invited to submit a full proposal. If successful, the town will be required to contribute $56,000 in matching funds and $10,000 in in-kind contributions. So part of the application submission requirements are a motion of support from council, as well as a confirmation of the available funds, so that $56,000 would be the matching component the town would have to move through. So if successful in the feasibility process, we would be well positioned to apply for the capital funding stream of this project, which does provide low interest loans of up to $10 million and grants worth up to 15% of that, covering up to 80% of eligible costs. So could get us at least on the radar for future capital applications for the aquatic center as well. So looking for two motions from council, one to approve the submission of the full application, as well as to approve an allocation of $56,000 from the facility reserve, should we be successful with that application.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Can I please have someone make the first motion? Councillor Wing, not Director Wing. Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I would move then that council approve a submission requesting grant funding through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Green Municipal Fund for the Innisfail Net Zero Aquatic Center feasibility study.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No? Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. And second motion, please.
Mayor Barclay will make the motion that council approve the allocation of $56,000 as the town's contribution to the Innisfail Net Zero Aquatic Center feasibility study to be funded from the faculty reserve.
Facility. It's okay. It's okay. I don't have my glasses on either.
I do have one question.
Councillor Bates, you have a question?
Yeah, I do have one question. Do we have a gut feel of that we are quite feasible? I'm just curious. Like we must know that certain aspects of the aquatic will lend itself or won't to interaction with.
I think the biggest part, it'll assess the cost of some of those things as well as to what the net benefit could be. We also don't necessarily know for sure whether it would be feasible to basically pipe the waste heat from the waste to energy facility. It's about 600 to 800 meters, I believe. Some people say, oh yeah, sure, we just pipe it up there and it'll be great. But how that actually works, how that works within existing infrastructure and right-of-ways. So it would look at all of those avenues as well.
Okay, and then, sorry, supplemental question, would we be committing this now? And are we, like, is there a point at which we're going to know the successful potential of the feedstock, or? You know,
So that would
that's where-
be, the feasibility study would tell us whether any of those avenues identified what the costs would be, which would then allow council, if we want to integrate those into that larger facility
So
scope.
we need to do it now.
Yeah,
in
we would
order-
do it
Otherwise,
as soon as
you create too
possible.
big a delay later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? No? Okay, all in favor? All right, carried. And we'll move on to 8.2 with Director Jenkins and the Woodlands area presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Barkley. So council requested a week or so ago, following the Laban open house on the Woodlands Estates outline plan, to just provide an opportunity for council to go back over a bit of the history of that area, particularly associated with the front-end funding of a lift station, which was previously discussed, and we'll kind of go through that and provide council an opportunity for any sort of further clarifying questions on that background. So the Woodlands Development Area is covered within the town's municipal development plan, the Woodlands Area Structure Plan, which was originally adopted in 2003, and the Woodlands Outline Plan, originally adopted in 2008 and last amended in 2015, as well as the town's land use bylaw. So we're going to primarily talk about servicing today. So the water servicing for the entire Woodlands area is achieved through connections at the two road stubs off 36A Street and via Woodland Road. So this is the existing Woodlands plan. This isn't what was proposed at the open house. So you can see the two connections in the north, as well as a new line coming down Woodland Road to service the area. And then for sanitary, so sanitary servicing for the entire Woodlands area would travel by gravity mains to the lift station and then be pumped across the tracks to tie into the regional lift, the line that goes to the regional lift station. So on this drawing, the arrow at the bottom, that's the location of where the lift station will be constructed or would be constructed. So essentially, the entire area would drain towards that lift station and then be pumped up to that second arrow where it goes under the tracks and goes over to the main line that takes it to the regional lift station. So where the star is indicated, that's where this new proposed amendment would allow a connection to the existing sanitary in 36A Street, which would service sort of that first area. So the lift station in the south would not be required until subsequent phases. All right. And then in terms of background, so in 2015, the estimated lift station construction and associated oversizing costs was $1,375,000, with a total estimated cost of $1.8 million over a 10-year debenture. The recovery was to be spread over the entire benefiting area of Woodlands. So there's 194 acres of benefiting area. That includes Laybon, the Hereford Meadows area. So that's on the east side of Woodland Road. There's a town parcel as well as the collection of acreages that are located along Woodland Road. At that time, it was estimated Laybon's first phase would have contributed $150,000 towards that cost. Borrowing bylaw 1580-2015 was approved in July of that year. No expiry date is stated within the bylaw. However, that bylaw would need to be renewed with updated costs and review of the proposed engineering. So no agreements exist between any of the parties. The costs are applied as what we call boundary improvement charges, which form part of the development agreements that we sign with developers as part of their subdivision approvals. Essentially, that borrowing bylaw was the only report and motions made in open council. There was no other discussion made at the council level respecting discussions or agreements directly with Laybon. So then the proposed amendment that Laybon has currently come forward with their open house, which will likely come forward to council here with requests for first reading in the next few weeks, is to make that connection to the existing sanitary service at 36A Street to service the first phase. This adjusts the phasing, postponing the requirement for the lift station into phase 2 of their development. And there is potential, so there is a trend towards the use of smaller, more temporary lift stations that further extend the time, or that could extend the time before a full lift station is required. So we do see these in some subdivisions where they, as opposed to building that entire lift station that can service the full area, they do kind of an interim lift station that will get through a certain amount of the development. So I will open to any other questions council may have, if I can enlighten any of the history there.
So Director Jenkins, can you go back to the site plan?
Yep. That's probably the next one, Erica, or Vanessa's
one,
more.
yeah. So the first phase on this would have been,
Essentially the south access off of Woodland
Yeah.
Road. It would have been that area.
kind of the little loops along there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Would have been sort of both sides of that street.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then that lift station would open up the commercial land, the highway commercial land as well?
Yeah, essentially everything on that
Okay.
drawing would have.
And then there was a comment or that the share for Laybon would be 150 with the first phase, and that's this first phase, correct?
Yeah, this first phase. That was the estimate in 2015 of what Laybon's contribution would have been
Okay.
as part of that first phase.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bates?
It probably doesn't show on this diagram. There was mention made of a town parcel.
Yeah, so where that, the connection to Woodland Road, that south piece, the town actually owns that piece where the road's gonna come across from Woodland into Laybon's development area. You may recall Laban offered to purchase it a couple times.
It's very small.
Yeah, I think it's about 3 acres, and the road connection will pass through it, and the town essentially would have the opportunity, I think there's maybe 6 lots or something like that would directly front onto that road. But it was procured by the town to ensure that this access would be able to be achieved.
Okay, I think we'll just have a motion then that we accept this as information.
Mayor Barkley, I would make the motion to accept this for information.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wing. Any further comments? No? Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. And we will move into, thank you, Director Jenkins. We'll move into 9.1, correspondence and information. I just want to, well, let's talk about the letter that's on our desk from Central Alberta Mayor. So last week had a meeting in Ponoka, and of course this is kind of a follow-up as to our support for Sheka in Red Deer about a month ago. So we're looking to send this letter off to Minister Copping, as well as our respective MLAs from our various areas, as well as the health critic, David Shepherd, as well. And this isn't to be political, saying that you're bad, somebody else is good. It's only about bringing awareness to Central Alberta and what we feel is kind of a lack of attention that this area has got in many, many years. And I think we're all kind of grappling with some of the same issues. You know, some are different, some are the same, but it's kind of a start to get our message out there. And Mayor Ferguson would send this off this week if he can get all the everybody in place. And I think there's going to be other mayors that will probably be on this letter as well that were not at the meeting last week in Ponoka. So it's been sent out to all the mayors of Central and South Central Group. So does anybody have any questions about this? And if not, I would like a motion that we send this letter off to Mayor Ferguson in Ponoka to be a signatory.
Mayor Barkley, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any comments, questions? Read it all? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And then also, where is it, number 3, Economic Development Week is May 9th week, I believe. So like a, like a motion, please, to declare that as Economic Development Week.
Excuse me, I would move that we declare Economic Development Week in the upcoming future.
Okay. Number 6, that was the item, sorry. Yeah. Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you. And Innisfail Food Bank invitation. So I'm assuming that everybody would like to go have a visit with the Innisfail Food Bank. So we'll set up with Vanessa to send invites out. I believe Heather would like us to come a couple people at a time so it doesn't get too crowded in there. We'll do that over the next few weeks. And career fair coming up, Innisfail High School. That looks like a good event. So hopefully lots of people get on board with that. And anything with the ICF agreements, CEO Becker? Or?
Mayor Barkley, only that they've extended the review period from 4 years to 7 years, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so please have somebody make a motion that we accept the correspondence as information.
Mayor Barkley. Mayor Barkley, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll get into council reports with Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Last week, Friday night, attended the community awards. It was wonderful to see some of the recipients be able to attend, one in particular who's in the audience with us today. Congratulations, Ron, again. This week, I've got the Community Service Standing Committee on Wednesday night and the ECDEV Committee on Thursday night.
All right, thank you. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. I also attended the community awards on Friday evening. And again, I'd like to offer my congratulations to our Citizen of the Year who's sitting in the gallery, Mr. Ron King, very, very deserving. So congratulations, Ron. I'm going to be attending on Friday evening the Diversity Magazine and TV Awards in Red Deer. What that is, I'll let you know at our next council meeting, because I'm sort of at a loss. It's a 3-hour presentation there, so I'll be attending that. And also the development proposals we're having on the land between 54 and the subdivision tomorrow evening. So that's it.
All right, thank you. And Councillor Wing.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Last week, I enjoyed several Volunteer Week celebrations, and of course, ending with our own Community Awards evening last Friday. Thank you to administration. It was a beautiful event. Thank you for your work, and certainly sincere congratulations to all of our nominees and recipients, especially Mr. King down there. Also, last Tuesday, I participated in the meeting with Council and Health Minister Copping, as well as the Municipal Development Plan Advisory Committee. Thursday was the Parkland Regional Library Executive Committee, as well as the AB Muni's webinar on climate risk assessment. This week I will be attending the Napoleon West Open House tomorrow, as well as the Infill Library Board meeting tomorrow evening, and happy to welcome Jen Chabot as the new Executive Director of the Innisfil Chamber of Commerce, and Amy Ramsey as the new Innisfil Public Library Manager.
Perfect, thank you. And Councillor Maceros.
Thank you, Mayor Barkley. Last week, I also attended the discussion with Health Minister Copping and the Municipal Planning Committee meeting. And this year, I'll be going to the Napoleon Lake South Development Housing Open House this week. And I'm sorry I missed the community awards, but sincere congratulations, Ron.
Okay, and Councillor Bates.
Yes, so last week, busy day, the one day the engagement with Minister Copping, followed by a municipal planning commission and the municipal development plan meetings. I also, the next day, attended the semi-annual waste management commission with our fellow municipalities, where we monitor the old landfill up by Pine Lake, and it's stable. We're going to continue to monitor it probably longer than some of us will live. And hopefully it stays stable. The Community Awards Friday night was a very pleasant format. I thoroughly enjoyed that versus, you know, some of the past, the way we've done it. I really think that was great. This week I will, tomorrow actually, through the Water Commission, I'm going to attend the hydrogen conference for one day. It's kind of a drive up, drive back, and that'll be interesting because I've never been up there. And I will get back in time to catch part of the Southwest Residential Open House. And not very town official, but Wednesday I plan to attend the cancer fundraiser, the boob tour for the with the Rieberger and King families, and I understand it's sold out. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. I've heard there's something like 8,000 people going to the hydrogen convention, so it'll be a busy place. Yeah. Yeah. So last week, of course, participated in the Minister Copping meeting, and thanks to Dr. Hertlicka and Wendy Evans, who also joined us. I attended the Mayor's Prayer Breakfast in Red Deer. Also, the MCC AC Municipal Climate Leadership Council. A discussion was around, of course, preparing communities for the transition, what that might look like. Some of the information they shared with us, of course, 2023, Alberta will be completely off coal for electricity generation, which is 7 years ahead of schedule. Goal of a 45% methane reduction by 2025 is being supported by regulations and policy incentives. Of course, hydrogen locomotives we know very well in this community. Testing currently taking place on heavy hydrogen transport trucks out of the Edmonton area, and there's also technology with drones being used to plant trees in hard-to-reach places. And then also ATCO blending hydrogen into natural gas for home heating. And the circular economy, an example they gave was large mining truck tires, the ones you see up in the oil sands, are being recycled into new tires and other material. And there was somebody that was just awarded a grant for helping with that work. Of course, attended the community awards, and congratulations, Ron King, as well as all the other awardees and nominees, and also many thanks to town staff for all the work that went into that event. I thought it was a very, very good format for sure. I stopped in at the Helping Hands ball hockey tourney on Saturday. There was a few of my old schoolmates that were playing, and they said they were having a hard time getting a whole team together because of hip replacements and knee replacements and heart disease and all sorts of things, but they also didn't ask the girls to play. So maybe next year, we'll see. We didn't want to be showing up. But, of course, we could have a girls' team, so watch out next year, yeah. So all in all, a good busy week, and another one coming up this week. So we will move into open mic session, item number 11. Is there anybody here that would like to come up to the open mic? Please come up and turn the microphone on and state your name, and welcome.
We waited. Thank you for letting us speak today. We're new to Innisfail. We love your little community. We've been here since March 1st. We bought our house, but we also lived in Spruce View for the winter. It took us a while to find out where we wanted to live. It took us a while to find the house that we wanted. Centennial Park is where we decided to live next to. It is an issue. It's a huge issue. I would hope that all of you would be able to understand what we're dealing with there. Is that because it's a new community or new area, we assumed, and that was wrong of us. I had gone there a couple of times, walked the neighborhood, went at night. It was beautiful. We love it. We love the fact that there's lots of places to walk. We have 2 dogs. It's all family oriented. We sent a letter on April 10th because on Easter weekend, I had invited all my family. I have sons. One is in Calgary, one is in Edmonton. They all came and had dinner. And I'd already had a lot of problems with the noise complaints, vehicles. I saw donuts being done into the parking lot. I have to thank you for putting in the barriers. That was huge. But 2 days before that, I also saw that you put up the awareness of speeds. And I'm just curious, what does that mean? Do you get any information from that? How does that going to improve? Are you thinking about doing any issues around Centennial Park? You brought up earlier about the noise of vehicles. That is just one of the problems that's happening. There's also the fact that there's kids that are involved here. When the donut, this big, huge Dodge truck that did donuts into there was kids playing at the park at that time. It was during an afternoon. And if you saw the Easter weekend, it was packed. And still, there is a group that is consistently there, meeting there, acting out there in a way that's dangerous to the kids. It's dangerous to families. There's a couple of times where the music is so loud, the thumping, thumping, thumping. When you go and have an interaction with these people, I wonder if there is a confrontation with these people, and I've had one. It wasn't pleasant, it wasn't nice, but it was necessary to get the information for the peace officers and the RCMP to get involved. Because I was told after a few complaints that I needed the information of the time of day. I was like, great, because I'm not a complainer, I'm a doer. You give me what I need to do, and I will do it. So he said, you need the time of day. Got it. You also need the description of the vehicle. Perfect. You need a license plate. Okay, now that's tough, because a lot of them back into their space, and you only have one way to see. I'm from BC. We had 2 plates, so no matter which way they were going, you could get a plate. But here, we only have 1 plate, and it's in the back. And lots of times, they pull in so gosh darn fast, I couldn't get a plate. And then they would back in, and then they would just sit there. So the only way to get a license plate was to actually interact with them to go get it. And I did do that. I went there, and I interacted, because I had watched for 2 weeks, complained for 2 weeks. And then I finally got directives. This is what you need. Perfect. I went and I did it, and it wasn't pretty. The next day, I was approached by the RCMP to say, do not do that again. This is dangerous. The person you were interacting with has a record. Please do not do this again. This person is in control of the group that is problematic in that park. And that's all I'm going to say, because the RCMP, if you want more information, I can give that to you individually. But right here, I just want you to know that since then, they've approached my property. 2 of the group have approached my property saying that it was about following a jackrabbit across the road, and they got on my property and they stood there waiting to take my picture. It was quite intimidating, and I can see why. That the group that lives in that neighborhood, and there's a few of us that were here, there is one still here, that deals with this on a daily basis. I was told at the very beginning that it was just a youth problem. This is not a youth problem. The group that started, they're adults, and the people that they hire to run and do their jobs, that most of them are from here, and some of them are not from here. And we just found out today, some of their license plates are false. They're not real. So on that regard, again, I'm not going to say much more. It's an investigation. I personally, myself and my husband and my family have a camera that we use for wildlife. We love wildlife. It's got a nice big lens, and because I was told by the constable not to approach them, I, on my own, with my husband when he's home and my children, have managed to get photos to give to the RCMP, to the peace officers, so that we know who that group is, and it's a long list. I keep a daily log of the issues that we're having. I've got a list of vehicles with their license plates.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, because I just want you to be aware that, like, the meeting is public. So
Yes.
it's being recorded. So just so you are aware that people can go
Yes,
on and listen to it.
I want people to know
Yeah.
that this is a bigger issue than just some youths. That's all I'm going to say. I do record those because I need to be able to find out who it is so that I can pass on the information so they can get the tickets. When they're roaring, and you were there Sunday night, again, we had someone that roared down that hill and went right around. It is frustrating to have labeled it a youth problem. And it's frustrating when I understand from the neighbors that this has been happening for years. This is years in the making. So the fact that it's not been dealt with, I guess my biggest question is, what is council prepared to do? I know that you did put in the speed limit thing. How does that work? Can you explain to me how that works? Does it come back with information on how many people are speeding? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I'll let CEO Becker answer that, because it's more of an operational question.
Yeah,
So,
definitely,
yeah.
to the delegation. So data is collected, and it is public. We'll make it public, definitely. I did see it, and so the manager, you saw Gary earlier, so that's his department. And council has not seen that information, but I can state that what we found, it's a high traffic area. Obviously, it's about 1,200 vehicles per day. Right now, it's demonstrating a higher speed than, mostly higher than the speed limit. Until I have the information in front of me, onto council, so yeah, there's indicators there. We put it there large part of the season, and we'll actually turn it off too. But it means it's still on, it's still recording, but so often people will either speed up or slow down when they see the speed that they're going. We'll turn it off to get a true reading, and people don't know that it's still on. So that's how it works. We do it throughout the community. We have some that been on the polls, but that data will be revealed onto council to demonstrate the findings of that information.
So what happens when you've got that information?
So it really adds into the conversation with council on, is there opportunity to put in additional, whether it's engineering, whether it's speed bumps or not, or we're limited on enforcement. We have 2 peace officers for the town, so they can't be there all the time.
That's right.
So it really is another tool that demonstrates, what's going on in that area. And definitely it's been a topic of conversation of the
Good.
community for
good
a
to know.
while.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Like when the donuts were happening and did you call?
Oh,
A-
absolutely.
And did somebody come?
No,
No, okay. Okay,
because they'd already left.
okay.
And there
yeah,
was,
that's the
all I
problem,
could
right? Yeah.
provide was the time.
Okay, well, okay. I appreciate you coming forward so much. It's good for everybody to hear this. I've been dealing with this for too long. And, we've
So
talked about
when would I be able to hear what your solutions are?
well, we have talked in the past about putting a gate on. That didn't happen. These barriers or concrete blocks that went in, it was done last week, I think, or the week before. I don't know if
No, it was last
it's
week.
probably helping with the donuts. It may not be helping with the noise. I know it's a source of frustration. There's somebody in your neighborhood that contacts me on a pretty regular basis. And to be honest with you, I get as frustrated with this as you do, even though I don't live there, so I can't imagine how frustrating it is. So we need to find some solutions. And CEO Becker?
I can add in, so you heard Manager Lee speak to it. It's not just one conversation, but May the 12th, I believe you referenced an evening to engage with officers, and we're making it aware to council too, you come over and write on location and have conversation and add in to your experiences, obviously.
And do we get that in the mail? Because I haven't received
We
that
haven't
yet.
publicized it yet.
Oh, okay. I was
It's
like
just-
surprised when I heard
It's
it
being
tonight.
organized
Okay.
currently. Also, I'll give you my card too. I'm the town manager and onto the enforcement team. Happy to, through Gary, who you saw earlier, he's open too, if you have not connected with him, and he can just outline some of the administrative operational pieces that he's thinking about. And yeah, then you can certainly take that information as you like. But I'm available to chat whenever
Perfect.
you feel.
That'd be great.
Does anyone have any comments to make? Or Councillor Bates?
Well, just, wasn't a great contribution, but a year ago I was walking by there and managed to grab a license plate of a donut doer, and I know they did get a ticket. So if you get lucky, you can get the odd one. But it occurs to me that if there is an organization that I'm hearing about, likely whatever the RCMP can do will help traffic in all of the town, because I think those people drive like that coming and going from wherever they come and go from, and are the source of other problems. So to the extent that that can be dealt with, it'll probably help more than just your area.
Oh, and I did want to say that the RCMP have been fabulous, and so have the peace officers. I have no complaints there at all. They have been responsive. Yes, they're just limited because we had 2 humongous fires in the park. That's another thing you need to consider, is there's no bylaw, and we've been told twice now in 1 week, because it was their days off but the fires were bonfires that were so big, they had to get the fire brigade to come and put them out. Now, is there going to be a bylaw considered for that? Like, that park is for families, not for huge bonfires. And it's a beautiful place. Sunday, we had a whole ton of kids have a birthday party, and they had a beautiful fire and the roast, and just like it's supposed to be. But these kids that come at 10 o'clock at night till 12:30 in the evening, they are not there to have fun there. They're there to do whatever they're doing. And that bonfire was so enormous that the police had to come and ask them to put it down. And then the fire brigade had to come and put it out. So, like, that's an expense that the city always has to deal with. And the RCMP, the amount of work that they've had to do, at one time I had 6 RCMP dealing with one day, just one day. That's 2 shifts. That's a lot of expense coming out of your pocket. So, you know, I do think as a city, as a council, that you really need to consider not only the fact that a gate or something needs to be put in to help so that the RCMP aren't there in the end of night. I know you've already said, no, that's not going to be feasible, but there are other things that you need to be able to discuss, not just that. Like, don't end it there. Please discuss having some reasonable bylaws in regards to what these people are doing in the evenings. There has to be like speed limits. I'm not sure why it's not a 30-kilometer-an-hour. There are so many kids, I could film it all day long if you want, that were directly in the impact of what happened on Easter weekend. It was astonishing to see that these people that are there had no concern for all the families that were there. And when they show up, and they do, people are intimidated enough, they just leave the park. It literally goes into a ghost town when these people show up. So people are aware they're there, and they're aware that they could be targeted in a negative manner if they say something. And if they do, and somebody gets assaulted, is the city responsible for that because you haven't done anything? Or how does that impact the city in that way? Because I have to tell you, if I walked in there fully understanding I was an unknown, and I knew that if they looked me up on the internet, I don't have an internet presence, and I knew that I didn't have any family, and I don't work here, neither does my husband, and so I didn't feel any threat from them, and I still don't. I feel angry and I feel resentful that I have to deal with this on my own, but I want my peace. I bought that property for peace and quiet. It's a beautiful area, it's for families. Something has to be done here. And if it's not a gate, but something has to be addressed with this. I'm imploring you all to understand. Vanessa, unfortunately, has had to deal with some of my emails because I have taken it on myself to take video of what the offenses are. These people normally drive normal, but when I got them angry, I was retaliated against, and so were my neighbors, because they all had to deal with the noise that happened as a result of my actions of going out there and confronting them. And so I just want you to all know, like, this is really important. I can't say it enough. We feel intimidated by these groups. I'm not intimidated. Unfortunately, I'm not. I'm stupid. I am being directive with them. And the more they show themselves, the better it is for me, to be honest. I actually celebrate when I catch one. Caught one. Because they give me notice. As you said, you can hear them coming down the hill. You can hear them come around the corner, so I've got time.
May I ask you a question? You talked about the donuts in the middle of the afternoon, but are you finding that most of the issues are at nighttime?
As soon as the peace officers go off, normally, not always. For about a week there, they were actually there from 1:30 on. Sometimes they roar by our house around 11:30. Sometimes they're at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it just, when they're upset or when they're around, they'll do it. Most of the time it's when the peace officers go off. They are aware of their hours. And if you're a complainer, the RCMP will come. Like, they'll phone you and say, what is it that you want? And they'll come, and they're very good at that. But they showed themselves in force one day, and I literally was texting officers of what to do, because who is leaving and where to be at. So I'm just saying, this is a huge, momentous time for us as a city. You're growing at such an exponential rate. There's lots and lots in our neighborhood that aren't sold, and I have a feeling that it's because of this. We weren't told about it. Within a week, I understood the problem immensely. And within 2 weeks, I was making sure I understood it really well. And now I'm intimately understanding it. And I just want you to all know, like, this has to be discussed, dealt with, some bylaws need to be discussed. And if you can't put in speed bumps, because they'll go backwards as fast as they go forwards in that, even with those barriers in there. I've got video of that, where they literally come in and they just whoom, right back. If you cannot do that because of snow removal and things like that, I believe, I understand, I've talked to a neighbor, that you have ones that are removable for the snow time. So that's an option as well. Like, there are some options we need to be discussed, and that fire issue is a big one, because summer's coming, and they could burn the park down. Like, the fire was enormous. So it's just, I really am thankful that I got to talk to you today, because the frustrations needed to be verbalized for me to all of you.
As I said,
So, and
grateful.
Vanessa, I thank you for your tolerance of me.
And grateful you came, like, really, I appreciate it very much to hear this
And John
again.
was here, and we had another
and again,
neighbor here,
and
sorry.
again.
We had another neighbor here, she had to leave.
Okay, all
But
right.
I do have one that has a letter, if I could submit it after.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, please, you can submit it to Vanessa and
Vanessa,
and
okay.
Todd, and then they'll send on to us what.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
First of all, it's a real privilege for me to be here. I've always been curious what it's like inside here. We are also relatively new, coming in May. It'll be a year since we've been in Innisfail. And we chose this little town over many towns, partly because we have family in Red Deer and Olds, and it was a good place to be, but we love the town, okay? We love where we live. We live down by the park, and we're good neighbors. Unfortunately, our last neighbors, one of the major reasons he sold his house and moved was because he could not handle the tension of the noise and the disruption. The thing that really troubles me is just the lack of respect. I have had confrontation with Richard, with a couple of young people who simply could have cared less what we had to say. So the sense, and I says, look, all we want is mutual respect. We don't have a problem with you enjoying your life down in the park. It's a beautiful park. I come from Abbotsford. We have a park that was fairly close, about a block away from our house. They have a gated park. They have two gates, actually, where they have a drive-in and a drive-out. They close the park at sundown. They open it up at sunrise. Now, we can't stop people from walking in there, but I think there's wisdom in having control. It's interesting, I've talked to a number of police officers, which I just tip my hat to, because they have been most helpful and most respectful of, I don't like to say our complaining, but raising the issues. They not only take my number, they phone me back and they report to me what they've done about the issue that I have talked about, as per the fire and the police officer saying we're dealing with it, we're trying to put it out. I picked up the fire actually on my security cameras because we have it aimed at the park. And, but I would like to challenge council to reconsider the idea of gating. The two police officers said, you know, that is a primary means by which we can control who goes into the park and when it's closed and when it's not closed. And I think there's real wisdom. The Abbotsford Park, like I said, was gated, open at sunrise and closed at sunset. And I think there's wisdom in that. My other concern, of course, is, you know, I'm sitting in my family room enjoying a nice television program or just relaxing, and I'm hearing we talked about the volume of the vehicles, and these things just idle all night. And it's just it's because it's there, it bugs me, right? It's just irritating to listen to that growl all night, and it's that sense that gets me growling, and except I don't have the vocals to respond to it very much. The other night, last weekend, I think it was, I heard young people, or maybe older people, but probably kids, just screaming out loud, and no consideration. It was about 11:30 at night. I just, like 50th there and 60th, they simply become drag strips, and so some means, I appreciate what you're trying to do. I know this is a process. We want to cooperate with council. We want to be a voice. We want to somehow come up with things that we can work together on. And so it's not the idea we're against something, we're just for community peace. And with that, I'll say thank you for the opportunity to share. Any questions or?
No, thank you very much for
Okay.
coming, and once again, we really appreciate hearing firsthand what's going on down there. And
I got to say something.
do
You know
you?
me, Gene.
Do you?
I'd just like to thank
kidding.
everybody for the award. Certainly don't do what I do in the community for that. I've been here 53 years, and I just will continue to do what I can to further our community. And I want to compliment the administration and staff on a very well-run function, that you didn't have to sit in those awful chairs for 4 hours, because I'm old and I can't do that. Thank you very much again.
Okay, thanks, Ron. Congratulations. All right, so we will move on to upcoming events, item 12.1. And just have somebody make a motion, please, to accept the upcoming events as information. Councillor Bates?
I would move that. I wanted to ask a question, though, too.
Oh, sure, of course.
I think we got an invitation to present to the Catholic school, and I'm wondering
Yes, we did.
what's the what would the presentation
Well, but
be?
they invited me to come, so I suggested all of council come, not just me, and we'll just, it's grade 6 social studies, I believe, so they're wanting to know about local government. So I'll talk to Vanessa. I did one a couple of years ago, and we had a PowerPoint presentation that we put together, and hopefully it's still somewhere. And we can maybe print that off, Vanessa. I'll talk to you about it and we'll figure it out. But it's about local government. We'll get an agenda together and
Okay.
send more information out. And that is
Right.
next week. No, that's the 12th. No, I don't. I forget when it
Can't
is.
remember.
I think it's the 12th,
I haven't
maybe.
responded to it yet, but
Okay.
okay.
Well, whoever can come,
Anyway,
can
I'll
come.
move the
Yeah.
upcoming events and,
Okay.
oh, we got another one over here.
Sorry, Mayor Barkley. As well, I'm not sure if anyone else saw it, but Manager Shaw sent out invitation from the Central Alberta Business Summit on June 6th. I'm wondering if anyone else has had a look or is interested in going.
Well, it's the mayor's garden party that day at the Historical Village, so
Oh,
starting at 1 o'clock, and be busy serving pie and
all
ice
right
cream.
then, that's
So,
that, thank you.
Kate, did you make a motion? You did, okay. All in favor? Okay, carried. Then we'll have a motion to go in camera, please.
I'll move that we go in camera, Mayor Barkley.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried, thanks.
Need a break?